Okay, Jacob said he'd been here. He'll be here in 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. We'll start without him then. Hello, everybody. Sorry for the late start. Just a bit of technical difficulties, I think it's called in the industry. So welcome to Beliefs and Questions. Now, for those who didn't see, I was in a hangout, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where it was me, Andy Jack, against Veckle, G-Man, and I believe it was True Parasitism. I don't know if anyone else showed up, but they were the main people. Now, this was in connection to my universalism. So, what I did is I decided to do me and Jade have decided to do like an anti-that hangout, in which is much more respectful and knows that act like a clown or a jackass in this. Well, we'll try not to anyway. And so, with that said, I'll present it over to Jade to ask me whatever she wants, and then we can go from there.
Is it my turn?
Yep.
Well, yeah, I think, when we watch these hangouts, you will see people actually try to talk about things. Like I said, Gary and Andy Jack were trying to talk about universalism, and then other people, well, a certain other person, because I don't think we need to go into dissing other people and all that. But, hijacked the hangout and wouldn't even let them talk because, apparently they're all heretics because they believe in universalism. And it would be nice to have just a decent conversation between theists, atheists, and others about beliefs, about what their feelings are in the Bible. And I saw something on Facebook the other day, and it was actually struck me as funny. What it said was a guy said that, so let's say a Protestant asks someone, well, what are your beliefs? And the person says, well, I'm a Catholic. And then the Protestant goes, oh my God, you worship you're demon-ridden, you're a heretic, you're going to go to hell. But then a Catholic asks someone, well, what's your beliefs? And some person says, oh, I'm a Protestant. And the Catholic goes, oh, okay. Now, I realize that mischaracterizes most Protestants, but this is what we seem to find here on YouTube and on Facebook, too. It's like, oh, my goodness, if you don't believe exactly the way I do, you're misinterpreting Scripture. You're doomed to the fires of hell, and so on and so forth. And that's just not a way to get along. I've had conversations with a couple of people who are pagans, and they say it's really cool going to pagan gatherings, because someone will go up to someone and say, what are your beliefs? And they'll say their beliefs. Oh, that's really cool. These are my beliefs. And they don't fight with each other. They don't say, no, Diana is greater than Thor or whatever. They just go, oh, that's cool. And I really think that's the attitude we need to have. Like, that's cool. I'm done.
What I don't get, this is kind of on a side note, but what I don't get is the church that I go to, because I go to a Unitarian Universalist church. We go there with the kids, and they have a class. And what this class is, instead of it teaching, Christian doctrine or this and that, it teaches the doctrine from multiple different religions so the kids can go through and basically decide what speaks to them and what doesn't. But most religions don't do that. Instead, they're sitting there saying you must believe this or you must believe that. Yet at the same point, there's that lovely little line in Galatians, which, depending on your interpretation, can be seen as, well, only pay attention to the Scripture as it speaks to you and as it feels right to you, basically. And if somebody gives you a message other than that, tell them to piss off. Yet at the same point, people are condemned for doing just that. And it doesn't make any sense to me. Wow, didn't mean to silence all discussion.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Brandon, you alright? Do you have problems or? Anyway, let's talk today. Hey, Nate, how are you, mate?
Hey, what's up?
It's good to have you. So Nate, this is about a conversation. I don't know whether you saw the hangout that I was in with G-Man, where we were talking about my universalism, but I don't really know what your Christian, what denomination of Christian are you, Nate?
Non-denominational is probably the easiest way to explain that.
A non-denomination. Oh, so which church do you attend? Is it a non-denominational church, or is it a certain denomination, but you just don't really pay attention to like the doctrine and teachings of that?
Yeah, I really like what Becky said as soon as I got in here about how, why do we got to be so, like, absolute? Like, you must believe 100% like me or you are screwed. But I love you, but you're damned, but screw you anyway. But anyway, yeah, so I'm kind of that mindset. Yeah, currently I go to a church that's actually like Assemblies of God, but that's just the church I happen to like. I don't agree with everything they teach. I really like some of the stuff they teach. It's all about this personal pursuit for myself about what I personally feel is most accurate. And yeah, so I mean, it's going to be really difficult to find someone that believes 100% just like you, even in those clicks. You must believe just like me click. Even there, I think they just give platitudes and pleasantries a lot, because how are you going to find someone that believes 100% just like you? Anyway, did that answer your question? Well, a little bit more, but yeah. So I've moved around a lot, and typically whenever I go. Like I've been to Foursquare churches, I've been to non-denominational, the denomination, I've been to non-denominational, the actual non-denomination. Yeah, so it's not that big of a deal. Like, as long as it adheres to, kind of the core of Christianity, like God, Jesus, follow Him, do good things. Yeah, I think it really is that simple.
Okay, I mean, like, the question that I'm going to ask to the non-believers in the room is, do you see that there's a benefit to go to church, or do you think that maybe it's something that we Christians shouldn't do? I mean, like, do you think that, like, or would you say it depends on the specific church itself? So let's say, for example, the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, or other churches that are out there, is the one that you maybe say you steer people away from more than the others? That's the question there.
I'd say any church that promotes activities like faith healing, I would say stay away from, because that's something I feel really strongly. Parents not giving their children medical treatment due to their beliefs, but other than that, I think that churches can really be beneficial to community-wise. It grants a space for people who have similar beliefs, similar goals, similar to contribute to the community, and it allows for, a social gathering type of experience. I don't see any problems with the fundamental idea of church.
I would say it depends on the individual person and what works best for them. Like, I'm not going to tell anyone, like, you should or shouldn't go to this church or whatever. When it comes to people forcing their beliefs on their children or bringing that, like, I guess it's a little bit of a different issue. But it's for the most part, if they're not being hurt by it, if they're being served by the community, and a lot of people go to church for that community, then yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I don't feel comfortable in most churches, that's for sure. At least not anymore.
Yeah, and I would say I don't think there's anything wrong with church. It's the teachings of the church that can be scary. Like, I was brought up in a really fundamentalist church, and gay people were not accepted. There were people within the church that would be accepting of gay people, but not vocally. Like, they would never admit that to the church members. The church didn't treat women all that equally. I've never seen so much gossip and backstabbing as I ever saw at the church. It was the worst place ever. And so my church was bad. And it's interesting, though, because I've been to other churches. Like, I had a friend that was Lutheran, and my mom would let me go to church with her occasionally. And I remember the first time I went, they had their song service, and then the pastor, priest, I'm not sure what he's called in a Lutheran church, got up and spoke for a little bit, and then the service was over, and I was like looking around going, what, there's not going to be a sermon? Because there was nobody standing up there yelling and screaming hellfire and brimstone and you're a horrible person and so on. Instead, he got up and told a nice story that was kind of enlightening. And so I don't know. And I think churches can be good. I think churches can be bad. I think if they promote hatred and bigotry, it's dangerous. But I wouldn't know. I'd have to. I would never judge for other people. It's up to them to decide.
I don't know. I suppose I should probably volunteer to answer, but I go to a church. At least every couple of weekends I do. Now, in terms of the intrinsic value, I don't think there is any intrinsic value in churches. Now, in terms of individual messages or communities or this and that, there may be a value to that, but the church itself, I don't think has any real value. The location that I go to, the UU church that I attend with my wife and the kids, now they have a pretty decent community there. But in addition to that, they have other programs. My kids, sorry, the Texas Sex Ed program, for example, is horrible, but the church that I go to offers a comprehensive sex ed program that deals with, sexual responsibility and all these kind of things as well as other things, and that was a great program that was ran through the church. There's this current program, which is more of a coming-of-age group that the kids, that my older child, my daughter, is a part of, and that's been very beneficial to her, as well as the friends she's made there and what have you. But can that really be said that it's the church that's benefit, or the programs, or other potential social outreaches, or the community involved with it? Because I find that the messages of some kind of church body, what have you, generally doesn't speak to everyone. You know, some days the message will seem to be for you, and some days they'll seem to be for somebody else. And you seem to be able to differentiate between that. But the problem is once that church notion starts becoming this monolithic thing, and it starts becoming about the personalities in the church instead of, the messages to help your fellow man and this and that. Once it starts suppressing people and putting them down and making them, feel horrible about themselves, that's when you have a problem. When it starts becoming about that bottom line, the money, that's when it's a problem. And this is when it starts becoming less of a community of people coming together and more this monolithic entity that we generally refer to as a church. So from that vantage point, I would tend to say that I think churches need to go away, but I think church communities need to be strengthened and bolstered and need to serve a better purpose in people's lives, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Jade, you've not seen much, so I'll let you go because you're the person who hasn't spoke.
Well, I'm trying to be polite because you know me, I can't shut up. And by the way, Nate, my real name is Jade. The Becky's a fake, but you can call me Becky. That's okay. And I'm the person who sent you the link.
Oh, okay.
So I'm Miliagros Felis on YouTube. So I've got so many names. I didn't intend it
to the point,
that
Jade.
way. What?
Get to the point, Jade.
Okay, yeah. And see, 13 knows me. Well, yeah, I agree with you. I sometimes watch the MCC Los Angeles services on YouTube. MCC is a Metropolitan Community Church. It's an LGBT church. Although all the members are members of the LGBT community. And I'm familiar with it from when I lived down in Southern California. And if you watch their service, it's kind of funny sometimes because they have a very diverse congregation. And I remember the minister once turned around and said, and now for the Catholics in our congregation. Everybody laughed and he said something else because the people who are members of the LGBT community and their families are often, they feel more comfortable in a church that's accepting. But because of that, you have people whose beliefs are all over the spectrum. And that's kind of cool. And that church has huge outreach programs. They have outreach programs for people who are trans, for teens who are dealing with LGBT issues. They have a run every year for to help AIDS patients. They also have an AIDS ministry. They feed the homeless, not just LGBT homeless, but just homeless. It's a church that's very involved in the community and has all these programs to serve the community and their people. But as I said, I think one of the cool things about it is, ironically, because it started to serve the LGBT community, it ended up with this really, really diverse group of people who go there with a wide variety of beliefs. And I think that's a really healthy thing. I was raised in a Catholic church. And for those of you who don't know, I am undisclosed as far as my theist, atheist, whatever position. But I grew up during the time of Pope John the 22nd and the ecumenical movement, and it was a time when ministers were coming to Catholic churches and Catholic priests were going to Protestant churches, and you were having services with the different faiths together, and it was really cool. People need to talk to each other. Here in the Bay Area, in Berkeley, there's the Berkeley Theological Union. I may have that Berkeley Graduate Theological Union. I always get the title incorrect. I'll have to look it up and make sure I get it right. But it's a really cool place. It's in Berkeley, California. And it is composed of a group of different seminaries, from Baptist to Catholic. And they not only all get along, they all share some facilities together. And there are other groups. There's like I don't know if the Jewish seminary is part of the graduate union or it's associated. But there are other groups that are associated. They share the same bookstore. Laurie King, who's a mystery writer who attended the Berkeley Graduate Seminary, or attended one of the seminaries there, had a scene in one of her books that it so depicts it. You've got these people walking in, and you've got these people in the shared bookstore, and someone's going, oh yeah, the Wiccan books are over here. Oh, really? You're a Wiccan? Oh yeah, and it's just like nobody cares. It's just what you believe is a good thing if you are trying to make your life better and make other people's lives better, and you're not trying to oppress other people. That's then it can be a good thing. That's about all I have to say.
Okay, Brian, did you hear my question, or do you want me to restate it?
I've been battling with accounts trying to get in on the right one. I have heard absolutely nothing.
Okay, I'll restate the question, which was, do you believe church to be a good thing or a bad thing, more or less? Or does it depend?
It depends very much on the church.
Okay.
There are good churches and bad churches. I think everybody can acknowledge that.
And anyone that denies that should look up the Church of Scientology. Good example of that one.
Good case in point. Sorry, that's probably not the answer you were looking for.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Any answer you gave me was perfectly fine. Jacob, are you there? You there, sir?
I'm here.
Oh, can you just expound on what you believe for everybody? Just give a. I mean, because you're Catholic, aren't you? You're a convert to Catholicism. So what is your actual Catholic position? Because there's a couple that some outskirts have that not. I mean, do you hold the mainstream Catholic belief, or is it more one of the outliers?
I'm sorry. Well, I do believe that the traditional Catholic faith. Obviously, I hold to the essential tenets of Catholicism. Obviously, I'm kind of more laid back about it, if that makes sense. Like I'm very critical, extremely critical, of what I would call the rad trad movement. Jade knows what I'm talking about specifically. I'm a little more theologically conservative, but when it comes to like my politics, I will say I'm a little more liberal-ish, if that makes sense.
If I can sneak in for 1 second, Gary, when you get a chance, you may want to go to the control room and raise his volume a touch.
Okay, I will do. Sorry. Where is he? Just a minute. Sorry, Jacob. I'm just going to read your volume a tad.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Try now. Speak a little bit.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Try. Did that say better?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
What I said?
Oh, we were able to hear what you said. It was just that we were going to have to strain a little bit with you. With everybody else, it might have been hard. You might have been lost in the background noise, so to speak. So it's a matter of just equalizing you a little.
Oh, okay. Did you need me to repeat what I just said, or did you guys hear me fine?
No, I think we got it.
I heard you fine, and I'm the one here who can't hear worth a darn.
Okay. Okay, good.
Oh. But you know what Gary asked and what Jacob said is because even I said growing up in the Catholic Church, I had 12. Well, not in, mostly 12 years of Catholic education, and Catholics vary. I think there are some people who look at Catholicism as this one monolithic thing, and yet there's a huge variance, not only within the church itself, but within individual churches.
Okay. Well, the way I thought I'd do this, Jade, if that's okay, is that I get one of the non-believers, as it were, to ask all of us believers a question, if they would, and then we all take a turn to answer it. Does that sound fair, or do you think we should go another way?
No, I think that's fair. It's your hangout. I did just want to add one thing because I know Jacob and Nate probably weren't here at the time, but I did want to say that I think it's a good idea if we kind of do these occasionally, like every couple of weeks or something, and maybe get a G plus group so that if anybody wants to have a hangout that's a polite hangout face or whatever, you can just send everything to that G plus group, because I'm so sick and tired of the fundy takeover of the Christian side of the great debate.
Okay, so with that said, sorry Jay, sorry to interrupt you. Alright, with that said, who wants to go first from the non-believer camp to ask us a question? Go ahead. Raise your hand, or just say hand, or whatever. Alright, 13 wants to go first.
I might as well. I actually don't have that much time today, so I might as well. What I've found is that there are all these people that have these varied God concepts. Now, I'm a little bit agnostic in my viewpoint in that I don't think the word in and of itself really has any meaning. So this is a little bit where this comes from, so forgive me that. But when it comes to a God concept, the thought is, what would constitute a God? What would make something a God? And I look at the varied beliefs that are held by varied people, whether they be Calvinist or Arminian, I believe is the other one. Isn't that it? In any case, regardless of what belief you come from or what angle you come at it from, these concepts are very different. And there are all these qualities, particularly in Calvinism, I've noticed, that seem to be applied to this God that are very anthropomorphized, very human concepts. I mean, yes, we bandy around words like love or even hate in some cases, and this idea of the God being jealous, which it does state at one point in the Bible that it's a jealous God, and people tend to throw this out because it doesn't really make sense. And I think that the common perception that is espoused by most in terms of what this God is and what it wants is fairly humanized, fairly petty in terms of the fact that it's through such a limited human framework. And I was kind of wondering your take on that, whether you really think that as humans, if there were some kind of divine entity, whether you call it God or something else, if it's something that you really feel that we could comprehend well enough to define what it is or what it needs or what it wants.
Who wants to take that first from Nate?
Well, let me pick up that pin I just dropped.
No, I'll answer. The answer to that is, well, I think that we consider what it wants from us, from its creation, because I think that we can discern that it wants us to be the best that we can be. I think that if it didn't want that, it wouldn't have given us brains that we can think and self-awareness. And I think that because we're aware of ethics, I'm not saying on a superior level to other creatures, but on a different level, experiential level, I think that is what God is, in my opinion.
If I may, the question is more if you have this thing that is so much greater than us. Why should what is it about us that we seem to think that we can understand it? That's more the question. Do you really think that if something were truly divine, etc., that we could really fully understand it or comprehend it through mere human logic and human means, enough to claim what it is or wants or any of these other things.
I think we can claim what it wants, because again, to see it through us, but I think that to claim that we know exactly what it thinks or what it wants is a bit erroneous, because we're coming from a very human, interpretative point of view. But that there are things that, if we look at the way that our world is structured and the way that we can think, I think that does point to God having certain aspirations and expectations of us, in my personal opinion. Like, for example, I think he has certain moral expectations that we could be better than we are at the moment. You know, that we can exceed our very lowly background of just being plain animals. That we can be better than that. We can be more. I'm going to use the term now that I hate use, but more evolved in that sort of sense. And more ethically evolved than like your primate cousins and stuff like that. In that we can be better. We can be, better than that. And I think it's not just for us; it's for the rest of the universe as well to see. Because I don't rule out the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Who else? Does anyone else want to take that one?
Well, I'd like to actually expand on what you've just said by means of a question, preceded by an observation. Given that the more that we examine, for want of a better phrase, our companions on this planet, specifically, let's say, for example, other mammals, and we're actually observing more and more human-like characteristics, or rather than we're observing, but we are more accepting of previously considered human traits in other mammals. For example, expressions of emotion, the ability to play, do things just for the enjoyment of it. Do we actually need to look as far as the potential alien for corroboration or an indication of what you were just describing? Is this something that is, as you suggest, purely exclusive to humans on this planet?
At the moment, I would say yes, but I mean, like, because again, the humanistic behaviors tend to be like stuff like mourning and stuff like that. They don't tend to be sophisticated ethical processes. They tend to be, well, this is going to help our particular tribe of elephants travel over a great distance, therefore it's in my vested interest that we all go there. That's not really ethical thought, that's more basic self-interest. Whereas I'd say what I was talking about is proper ethical thought, and I would say that there is a difference between the two. I know a lot of people, a lot of quote-unquote atheists out there, like Richard Dawkins, say there isn't, but there is.
Well, wouldn't you would you agree or disagree that the emotion you just mentioned, mourning, for example, would you say that that was indicative of those higher functions, or would you just say that that's more mundane than that?
I'd say it's more mundane than that, because again, you can have reverence for something without actually respecting the life it holds. Because again, you can have reverence for a tree that's been cut down. That, there are people who have reverence for trees. Now they're not alive in any sort of what we consider physical sense. Now they're alive in a technical sense, but they're not really alive in the conscious sense. As far as we know.
Yeah, I mean, the example you gave specifically was mourning, not having reverence for a tree that's cut down. And we have observed animals in mourning for other animals that they have known.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think
does this not indicate some fairly complex processing and acknowledgement of a transition between life and death?
I would say no. It's probably more. Well, this is a member of our herd. We should make sure that he's buried so that nobody eats him. It's more like I protects our herd from attack by. It's more self-interest than it is reverence for that person for that creature passing on. I would say.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't know, because there are animals that like really get depressed, won't eat, will spend days looking for their companion. I don't know, there seem to be some pretty authentic periods of mourning in the animal species.
I mean, I've recently seen videos on Facebook of dogs desperately trying to revive their companions.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. I saw that video. But I think that, but I would say that dogs are different because they mimic human beings. Because because dogs do mimic human beings because they've been our companion for such a long time that they mimic human behaviors. Doesn't mean that they're representing it. It just means they're mimicking it.
Okay, would you make the same argument towards tool-using animals in the wild?
Actually, I'm just going to cut in for a moment. I'm going to have to call it. Thanks for having me.
No, it's all right, Tessie. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, well, I think Brad, me and you've been dictated. So what I'll do is I'll pass it on to Nate, and I'll pass it on to Nate to see what he thinks.
Fair enough. I'm just asking the questions here.
So, is the question something?
Playing devil's advocate, if you will.
So is the question something to do with like the difference in animals and humans, and can both or only one species exclusively relate to? Is that close enough?
The question is that how would you say that a god is seen? How do humans rise to interpret God? Was the question I think 13 asked, to be truncated it. I think that will ask the how would you personally say that you detect God in our universe, maybe? That sort of sense.
Oh, okay. That's a little different direction than I was prepared to go.
Well, you can go whatever direction you want, I think.
Yeah. It's an open forum.
Well, I think as far as detection, maybe to some degree, animal. I don't know. That's interesting. I think my answer for the animal part, I don't know. For the people part, I think they're. I mean, look at all the religions we have. Look at all the things that aren't religions, but they certainly have these tendencies. It's about this self-seeking, soul-searching, spiritual journeys, pilgrimages. So I think there's lots of methods as to which one, if any, is more effective than another. Well, that may be a different topic, but some will say they see a god or a thing that could, like 13 before he left. If God is too grand to really grasp. To some degree, people will see God when they look at the moon or stars or a tree or nature. Others will see it when they meditate and turn inwardly. Others will see it in the cosmos. So I don't know if that's good enough for now or not, but I think that's typically some of the main ways people will say they detect God. So maybe it's a more tangible thing, like you can feel the dirt and earth, and that's a sense of something. Or if it's a more intangible spiritual sense, and you just have this sense of knowingness or this feeling that you get. That's what I would think how people, seem to search for these deities, and some will say they found.
Okay, but how would you personally say that you detected the deity? Because I've heard you I heard your conversation with Live Life. Which I think you did a very good job on, by the way. Where you said that your existence that you have, it's reaffirmed your faith. So, is there any way that you think that is quantifiable of how God was proven to you personally? I mean, this isn't like trying to put you on the spot or anything. It's just trying to think further than what 30 was getting to.
Yeah, personally, it's all the above to some degree or another. My total existence on this earth is what gives me the perspective and views I have today. So not everything is religiously related, like depending on what food I eat or something. But because I've done something for so long, consistently, non-religious related, that eventually I'll get to a point where I'm like, you know what? That was there is more than meets the eye there, and I think I see that now. Even though at the time, religion was the farthest thing from my mind when I was doing certain things. Like, chiefly, the reason though is these personal, subjective, spiritual experiences. That's what I have to say. But fortunately, it's my journey, so I am my ultimate judge. But yeah, chiefly that's the reason. It's these spiritual journeys that it's difficult to explain to people who have no idea. Like if you're talking to a pagan or a Muslim or someone else of a faith that believes there's something beyond this realm, this dimension, whatever, that you can latch onto, it's a lot easier. Even if you have different beliefs, it's kind of like you can skip over that whole how do you know, because chances are if they're in some other faith like this where they believe in the spiritual unseen world or whatever, they're like, okay, we're already on this page. We believe this stuff happens because of things in our life. We just disagree on the deity behind it or something like that. So when I'm trying to explain it to people of faith, who, not like an atheist who said they've had these things at one part, but people who identify as atheists who are like, yeah, I've never had anything about what you're speaking. It's really tricky because they're like, was it a feeling? Is it like goosebumps? Is it like love butterflies? I'm like, in some degree, kind of, because I know what you're saying, but no, not really any of that. It's a complete different. It's like a sixth or seventh sense. So it's not like, goosebumps or, I get goosebumps when a good person sings on American Idol. That's not the same experience I have when I'm thinking about this deity or this spiritual experience. So in some way, it's similar enough for an analogy, but it's not good enough for an absolute explanation. But again, chiefly, my reasons are personal spiritual experiences that I can honestly, in good conscience, not attribute to anything other than this deity I believe is out there. End rant.
That's fine. Right, does anyone else have another question? Because he's gone now, so we can't really follow up if you wanted to.
Well, I'd like to follow up on that. With these personal experiences, so is that how did you get these experiences? Was it something you found on a personal journey, or was it something like I don't even know how to ask the question. So to give you some perspective, like when I was a Christian, I had those experiences, and I know what you mean. They are different. They're not. It's not just awe and wonder. There is something different about them. But the only reason I think I ever had them in the first place was because I was put in situations that induced them, but also because I was told they were God. So it wasn't so much that I discovered them for myself. It was that here you are in this situation and it makes you feel a certain way and you should feel that way, and it's God. So it was more like I was taught that side of that way of thinking. So I'm wondering how it happened to you.
So maybe my unique experience. I kind of grew up in a really I almost don't know how to say this. I don't know if there's a real category for it, but I grew up, I want to say, in the most strict, fundamental, religious zealot community you can think of, except with not a lot of the bad stuff. I don't even know if there's a way to categorize that, but it's these people that really mind their P's and Q's, and they were super strict and go to church every Sunday, pay tithes, do this, in that type of Quaker mentality almost. It wasn't Quaker, but I imagine the guy with the funny hat or something. But on the other hand, it wasn't their focus wasn't on homosexuality or politics. So all the stuff that usually gets associated with religious, extremely fundamental people, totally would have been the environment I was raised. But for whatever reason, I never really heard about those issues. They tended to focus more on their actual church members, and you better be at Sunday school at 9:30. You better read this much of your Bible. So I grew up in this mindset. However, my own family, my parents, and all my family that attended this church and was part of this community, they were actually pretty mainstream and normal. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of pressure. So I definitely grew up with a perspective of I see how these people live. And I would agree on some of their theology. As I was a kid and I grew up and became a teenager, I'm like, okay, well, I think they have the core parts about Christianity right. And I did my own soul searching as I became more of a teenager, and I checked into like some Buddhism and Taoism and some other philosophies and things like this, like some Wicca. I really wanted to explore what was out there, except I would always hit a brick wall, and I'm like, I'm just really, well, I'm getting off the question, but I'm like, okay, I've gone so far. Any more is intellectually dishonest for me to keep. I wasn't that articulate as a teenager, but that's kind of my thought. So I'd always come back to Christianity. I'm like, okay, well, no matter how much I want to get back at my parents or I want to tell them I'm a Satanist now to see the look on their eyes, as far as this Christian God notion goes, yeah, if I'm honest with myself, then we agree on this. However, some of these other issues, like how much you have to pay or attend church or jump up and down and scream like a dog or chicken, these things I'm not so sure about. So I think I had this kind of unique perspective that way. Anyway, well, can you recap your question? I kind of went up on like 3 trails. Sorry.
So just with your personal experiences, that sort of they're your proof that it's God. Like you believe it's God, right? So why? I guess why? Like why do you believe it's God? I guess maybe.
Well, first of all, yeah, sorry. That's what happens when I'm not in a religious hangout for so long. All that just came out. So
that's okay.
We should do this more regularly. I agree with you. Well, how I decided they're God is especially, there have been times when I wasn't really searching. I wasn't in that mode. I was like at at the mall or shopping or at a party or, doing something not very church related. And, an event or something would happen, which could easily be a coincidence or, something like that where I think, oh my gosh, whether it was avoiding an accident or some deja vu experience happening, you think, oh, whoa, what was that? I would always be cautious, and I'd be like, okay, that could totally be God. It could totally be a coincidence. Let's analyze this. So I would take each experience and work my way through it and decide what was most likely. And if I came out with a pretty even thing between coincidence and God, I would just kind of store that away and not really put too much in it. Other times, when I was, really focusing on the spiritual journey or meditation or reading through the Bible or, doing something that was, especially if I would try to pray or something like that, whether I was saying it out loud or just kind of consciously mulling over it, and I would specifically be targeting a deity. In this case, let's say the God of the Bible or Jesus, and something really immediate would happen either right then or the next couple days or hours that was so closely related to that immediate experience that I would think, okay, sure, it can still be a coincidence, but depending on how interested, and after this happens multiple times, spanning years of my life, where it becomes ridiculous in my estimation to think that this is a coincidence, because at certain points I'm like, well, you have to connect all kinds of dots, and you really have to go on an elaborate goose trail to make a coincidence out of these events that happened, especially when I'm invoking this deity by name. I find it really irrational to attribute it to anything else. I'm trying to give general answers to get the idea out there more than give you a specific example. Does that kind of explain where I'm coming from?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to disagree. I believe that your experience is your experience, but I feel like that's kind of the mindset I used to be in as well. I mean, I used to think God told me things, and I used to think God sort of unraveled plans in front of me that just made sense, and there used to be lots of things that I even had some really weird experiences too, not really visions, but I don't know, some odd things happened occasionally, and I always just thought God. And then it wasn't until I'd left God behind for quite a few years when I realized I don't do that anymore. I still get those experiences, but I think of them differently now. So but I can respect your point of view there, and I get it. It makes sense.
Okay, Nick, can I ask you a question? Did you ever at one point consider yourself an atheist? Just for question's sake. A simple yes or no would do. It's fine.
No.
No, okay, that's fine. Because my personal journey is from Anglican to atheist to agnostic to deist to Universalist to Quaker. So it's been a bit of a journey, as I said. And the thing is that to answer Shah's question, I think it's numerous things that lead one to believe in a deity. It's not necessarily an experience necessarily. It can be, what you define as being correct. I mean, I admit that I could be wrong about God existing. It's just one of the things that you have to be open about. But I think that sometimes, the thing is that you have to do what you feel is right and have the opinion that you have, which is you feel that is correct. And even if it turns out to be wrong down the line, it has to be something that is. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. No, sorry. It's alright because we're probably going to go for an hour. But I'll just say this to sum up. Again, I think most believers and non-believers go with what they think innately makes sense to them, and I think that no one position is the correct one or the rational one in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Hey, Fiona. So, yeah. So, have you got any other questions, or you got any questions for me?
Yeah, I guess. So you're a universalist. Nate,
I used to be. Yeah, I still am a universalist. Yeah.
What about Nate? Are you a universalist?
Not so much. If I am, it's very weak. I would like. I've often said if there was one thing I could be wrong about, I would love to be wrong about this. I would love to find out that there is this deity and universalism is the way it is. As much as I support and hope that actually is true, currently I think there may be some credence to that, but I'm not fully sold. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay. So Gary, with your universalism, like, I know that there is scripture to back it up. I know that. And like before I deconverted, I was a universalist in the end because that was the only way I could sort of. I don't know if I hate to use the word rationalize, but that was sort of the only way I could remain a Christian was if universalism was correct, sort of thing. Because I just couldn't really believe in the hell concept anymore, or that this eternal punishment type of concept. And I actually didn't even know about annihilationism. Is that what it's called? I didn't even know that was an idea, so that might have been okay too. But so I'm wondering, Gary, like, how did you become a universalist? Like, what is it? Is it something purely scriptural, or is it something that I don't know? Is it something you believe because it's more logical, or something? Like, why do you?
Well, when I went through my post-deist phase, which was around 2003, 2004, I would say that I began looking into faiths and decided that Christianity was the one that appealed to me personally. It's the one that made rational sense to me. I'm not saying, oh, that makes it the correct faith. I'm just saying it's the correct faith for me and what makes the ethical sense. Now, what I did was I looked around all the different denominations and I looked at their theology and I thought, which one makes the most sense? And universalism made the most sense to me because if you look at all the scripture where people point to, well, there's a division. Those divisions tend to be in the time. Talking about the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the separation between them and the Jews who were going to it tends to be things like that. It doesn't tend to be people who don't believe or anything like that, and that's the reason why it is scriptural, but it also personally makes sense to me because, again, I don't think God is that petty that he cares about what you or anybody else believes as long as you are a decent person at the end of the day, as long as you have good things about you. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons, but also I do think there is theological and scriptural evidence for having that position, and, I do think it's the more rational position to hold, but again, I can't tell somebody else what theology they have to have, because again, that gets into didactic theology, which I'm not really a fan of. I think you should be willing to persuade somebody what they have.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, or do you want me to?
No, that makes sense. I get it.
Alright, I'm going to bed now.
Okay.
And I wanted to kind of mention something here because Gary and I kind of talked about this a little bit. You know, you'll hear people get very upset, and they'll say things like, "Well, you can't tell me that Hitler's going to be in heaven, or you can't tell me that, some serial killer is going to be in heaven." And yet, what we know from psychology is still pretty, uncertain in many ways. But we know that serial killers are, the word just escaped my mind. But they can't stop themselves. There's something in their mind that makes them do this over and over again. They're compelled to kill, and they're not in complete control of this. I have mentioned before, Freddie, what the hell? It's probably some bird or something. Sorry about that. I've got a very excited cat here all of a sudden. But I've mentioned before about a guy who one day walked into a police station here in California with a woman's breast in his pocket. And that might sound really horrible, but it turns out that this guy was a truck driver, and he was a serial killer. And he'd been trying to stop for years, but the compulsion, that's what I was looking for, the compulsion was too strong. He couldn't stop himself. But he kept trying to work up to it, and one day he finally managed to do it. But he was afraid that the police wouldn't believe that he was killing women. They would believe he was some, these people who are always, confess to crimes that they haven't committed. So that's why he brought the woman's breast with him, so they'd believe him. And you've got to give that guy a lot of credit. I mean, from what we do know about serial killers, they are under a compulsion, and they can't stop. In a way, they do stop because they eventually become so obvious in their killings that they're caught. But so how could you say someone like that is going to be sent to hell? What they've done is horrible. And here on Earth, you would say, yeah, send them to to prison for life. But can you see a God who knows all and understands humans, because we're allegedly God's creation at some point or another, condemning someone to hell for a compulsion they can't control? And we know there are sociopaths, we know there are psychopaths, we know there are very damaged people in the world, and I find it very hard to believe that people would be disregarding what hell is anyway, which is supposed to be a separation from God, not a fiery place. That a God would send someone to eternal torment for something they couldn't control. And we don't really understand the psychology of all the horrible crimes that people commit. So, yeah, that's just my take on it.
If I could just mention something, I brought it up last night with relation to Hitler, people like that. And I mean, how I, as a universalist, get my head around that. I keep using the bus fare analogy, that I can either pay my bus fare or I can accept the offer of someone else to pay it for me. I get to my destination either way, but one way has cost me something and one way has cost me nothing. And I think that's a bit like accepting Christ. If you accept Christ and you accept his payment for your sins, then you don't have to pay for them yourself. If you don't accept Christ, then you are going to have to go and pay for them yourself, because what you're saying is, well, no thanks, I don't want you to pay for me. And I hate using the word, well, the phrase burned away, because it makes you think of a nippy, burny hot place. And I don't want to give that impression. But it's the best way to express it I can think of, that if you are paying for your own sins, then you pay until once you're clean, of all of that, then you can go to be with God. So you've paid yourself, and that payment is also changing who you are. And so when people say, well, you universalists say, you know, Hitler's going to be up there in heaven. Well, I mean, given the number that he killed, I think by the time I get there, Hitler still won't be there, because he would still be busy being cleaned of all these sins that he's done. But I think that ultimately there is a way for everyone to be reconciled with God. It's just the difference is whether you accept the payment by Jesus Christ, or you say, no thanks, I'll pay myself. And also when you talk about payment for sin, or punishment, there is an end to that. You know, the punishment fitting the crime, etc. And this is why I would struggle with this eternal torment, because it means that then sin could never be paid for. And that, to me, is something. It's like holding a toddler responsible for the rest of his life for spilling a glass of milk when he was 2. Doesn't strike me as something that a loving Father and a just God would do. You know, based on the God that I know. And I can only go based on the God that I know. And really, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, building on that, Fiona, there is an observation that I'd like to make, or a few observations in that vein. The first, with regards what you were just talking about, with you can either pay for your sins yourself or have Jesus pay them for you. In that vein, one has to accept the possibility that somebody like Hitler may have accepted that offer of payment, even if it was on his deathbed. But there's also another angle as well, which is fairly evident when you read through various scriptures. And that is the notion that Satan, yeah, the great deceiver, if you like, in a lot of the instances that you read about in the scriptures, he's actually performing tasks within the greater plan. So one could also make the argument, given some of the other stories that we read in the Old Testament, where God mandates various what we would consider atrocities by modern day standards. One could also formulate the argument that maybe Hitler was doing exactly the same thing. Maybe there was purpose to the atrocities that he committed within the context of that greater plan. So if that is the case, then contrary to our perceptions of Hitler, he may have been working for the greater good. Now, I know to our sensibilities that sounds anathematic, if that's the right word. But given that we are human, and given that we are limited to a human perception, and given some of the atrocities that are depicted in the Bible, with God's blessing. Not a scenario that you can rule out entirely, just as you can't rule out the despicable serial killer who, when he's standing in court, swears blind, God made me do it. So when we're weighing up all of these interpretations and human atrocities to our perceptions, it's, to my mind, it's a bit of a both an intellectual dishonesty as well as an arrogance to claim that this, that, or the other behavior is antithetical to God's will, to that greater plan. And I think within that context, that in itself, those observations in itself, do make a very good case for universalism. I don't know. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, but you know, I just wanted to throw that into the mix and get various reactions from it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll answer real quick, and then I have to run. As you can see, my little monster behind me is waking up. Yeah, I think that's a valid point you raise, and yeah, I mean, I think when we get to kind of this level, we've unpacked this much, and it's more than just, you know, like mud throwing, then I don't think any point should just be like scoffed at or disregarded. We should really unpack it, which is what we're doing here, and I really appreciate. That being said, I think that view, as valid as it could turn out to be, well, the view is valid regardless, but whether or not that turns out to be absolute truth at some point in time, versus everything else I've heard, that's kind of the least on my radar is what I really believe to be accurate, which it's only my subjectivity. But when you compare it to all these other things, like what you said up until the universalist part, it's very, so, you know, it's a very reformed theology about, you know, this deity controls every molecule in this world, the cosmos. Nothing happens that this deity is not directly forcing and controlling. So when that would mean when babies get killed or you know, atrocities happen, Hitler does his thing, that means the deity behind controlling every single molecule is forcing them to do that, whether they want to or not. Quickly, another view is on that same line, maybe this deity wasn't forcing Hitler to do this. Maybe he just put the right guy in the right place who was going to do these things anyway, so God didn't have to make a good guy bad or something like that. But yeah, that's all I would say. So I think they should be unpacked, and I'm glad we're doing that. Thanks everyone for having me. I enjoyed it. I wasn't prepared. I thought it was going to happen in a few hours from now, but hopefully I'll be able to catch the next one, and I'll be a little more prepared and be able to hang longer.
Well, cool. We're glad you had a good time, and as I said, we want to make this at least a semi-regular thing, because we need to counter the impression. We need to counter the impression of Christianity that's in the Great Debate community, and we need to counter the impression that is of atheism in the Great Debate community, because it gets really out of hand, and you know, adults can actually have decent conversations. So, bye, Nate. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. See you all later.
Bye.
There is something I actually wanted to bring up a little more from the atheist side of things, and that's been on my mind lately, and that's the attitude that I find among a lot of people, especially more proactive people in the atheist movement, and it's something I've also noticed among my friends in the atheist group at the university I attend. It's that moderate, or more reasonable Christians and religious types, Christians, Muslims, etc., give shelter by their very existence to fundamentalists, and that, like, we shouldn't give them any more headway than we give the fundamentalists, because they're protecting them by their existence. There was and the other thing is, a couple weeks ago, the president of the group brought in a Christian, a pastor from one of the local Baptist churches, who was young Earth creationist, a really a nice guy, but just really ignorant. And like he said, or the president of the group said, I don't want this to be an echo chamber. I want people to hear opposing viewpoints and get some like challenging conversation going. And so he had everyone ask him questions. But from my perspective, I think that incident really reinforced the echo chamber, because to me it seemed like, okay, you want to bring in someone from the Christian side of things and have us engage with them, so let's find the most extreme person we can get, as long as they can have a civil conversation, and bring them in. Like we're going to present this person as representing Christianity, rather than someone like, there's nothing this guy said that anyone in the room was going to agree with. So yeah, I'll end that there. I just want to know what you guys sort of think of that attitude.
Could I just say that I don't think I could be accused of giving shelter to the radical extremist fundies, because it isn't really an all or none thing. You have to acknowledge that moderates do exist. It's just that we don't happen to be quite as loud.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's time that we did become a bit louder, because it's always the minorities that scream the loudest, and they're the ones that get heard. There are a number of ways to counter extremism. I don't think that by their very existence moderates are giving shelter to these extremists. I think that moderates need to not so much be attacking extremists, although that's part of it, but putting out the more moderate view, and also showing the effect of that more moderate view, so that there aren't just the extremists standing on the podium with their bullhorn. So I do think that there is a responsibility that moderates have to attempt to show that it isn't all this hellfire and brimstone. But we need to do it, as I say, you can do it in a number of ways. You can do it by tackling the extremist views, or by putting your own moderate views out there, just to get them known.
Yeah, I totally agree with Fiona. Like, I would like to see more moderates speaking up, because it feels like YouTube is all about these loud fundies that just scream and yell and say absurd things, and the moderate Christians, the ones that actually think about what they believe and are willing to consider the opinions of other people, those are the people that make sense. They're the ones that should be talking and speaking out. And I don't think there is any harm. Like, I as far as like the sheltering the fundies, I don't see that. The only place where I do have concern is in things like certain churches. So if you're a member of a church, such as the Catholic Church, because it is a big church, and when things happen that are criminal within the church, I don't really know how I feel about members being a part of it. Because I know there are plenty of most Catholics are against some of the things that have happened as far as child molestation and things like that in the church. So how does one be a member of a church? Like, how do you go about changing it for the better and fixing those problems, I guess, would be my only concern.
That just to jump in here, I agree with you, Fiona. I think that's a very, very valid point, especially on YouTube. But I think that also applies to the atheist camp as well, because the most vocal atheists do seem to be, for want of a better term, the rampant anti-theists. So I think there's an argument to be made there for moderates on both sides of the fence to actually sit down and engage each other, as well as those like Jade and myself who are undisclosed. Because there, I think, as Nate was saying earlier before he left, there I think there is opportunity to have a real conversation. Now, with regards to the point that Shah just brought up, again, I don't think the solution, as you put it, is something that is tied to any particular ideology or should be focused on any particular ideology. So it kind of ties in with what I was just saying. But I think the cure or the solution is when you do encounter erroneous arguments or bigotry, for want of a better terminology, being expressed by your own camp, I think it's vital to speak up against it. I really do. That's kind of really all I wanted to say on that particular point.
The attitude, like the reason, I think where people who have this attitude that I described are coming from is that, you know, the more vocal atheists in the atheist movement, they want to counter and end the harm that religion does, especially in its more extreme forms, and get it out of its influence out of politics and all that. And you know, I agree with those goals, but they see, I think people who have that opinion see moderate Christians as undermining that goal, because I mean it's a lot easier to attack fundamentalists. Obviously, I mean, it might be a bit of a straw man, but I know some atheists in the group that I mentioned, like, they don't like Christians, like a lot of the Christians that I've met here on YouTube, that have unconventional views of Christianity that don't fit into a denominational mold, or you know, a less conventional theists, even if they might, you know, be allies as far as humanism is concerned. It's a strange. It's the atheist movement, I think, has become very overly idealistic, and for lack of a better term, it's lacking in nuance. It's simplistic, and that's why I've kind of been distancing myself from it.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with what Brian said too. Absolutely.
Well, what I was going to say to what Shah said is that the thing is that when a moderate does speak out, we, from certain camps, we do get, well, either we're being deceitful or we're not doing enough. And I think that is something that is very troubling, well, it is for me. Because again, you know, I can only answer things as honestly as I can. Now, you may think that I'm wrong, or that I've misunderstood things, or that maybe I'm misspeaking. That's fine. But saying that I'm lying or I'm being wrongly deceitful is a little bit much, I think. And that's usually what moderates do get. Like, I remember there was a Muslim man not too long ago on, I think it was the New Covenant group with Dr. Jones. Yeah. And all the comments down below were, oh, he's dodging questions and he's doing this. And I watched that hangout with an open mind, and no, he wasn't. He was answering the questions as fairly as he can. Now, you might not agree with the answers, that's fine. But saying the guy was dodging is wrong. The guy was answering the questions. You may not agree with the answers, but that doesn't mean the guy was dodging. Anyway, I'll say hello to the new guy. Hello, Cider Thinker. He asked me for the link. I decided to be nice and give him the link. So, hey, hello, Cider Thinker.
Hello. Can I just make a quick comment on what you were saying about the atheist movement and with regard to moderates? I wasn't initially going to comment on this, but I wonder if it's, particularly in America, I wonder if it's down to the fact that there are political and social connotations with being an atheist, much more so than there are in the UK. And so it seems to me, from the outside perspective, that movement is very raw, very young, and very angry. And it hasn't, it hasn't, for want of a better word, evolved the nuance yet. I wonder if that's the case. Now, there is some nuance to it, but I think that's largely why. That would be my.
I think that's true. That is true. It is starting to fragment a bit, but in America, the conversation is much different, and there is sizable fundamentalist Christian presence in America, especially in the South, and it interpenetrates politics, society, culture a lot more than, well, as far as Christianity is concerned, a lot more than pretty much anywhere else in the world. So yeah, the conversation is different here in America. So I understand the attitude, but I think as far as the atheist movement being overly idealistic, I seem to come across a lot of more militant atheists that seem to think it's realistic that religion is going to go away in the future or in our lifetimes or whatever, and I just think that's kind of ridiculous. Even if every religion that currently exists now is gone in 100 years, it's just going to get replaced with something else. Like, for me, the biggest danger isn't religion, it's groupthink. Religion just happens to be one of the biggest places that groupthink festers, but it runs rampant in the atheist community as just as much.
Yeah. And I just want to add, like, Canada is also very laid back. We don't, most of the people I know my age and younger they would consider themselves agnostic. Most don't go to church. It's just not discussed in Canada. It's just not a big deal.
Yeah. I think America really is a special case, and in some senses a special head case. I had a question for Fiona, actually, if that's okay, Gary.
I think Jackie wanted to say something too.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jackie. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I feel like I'm more on board with the secular movement than I am with the atheist movement, because atheism is only a claim to a God. It's only a God claim. It doesn't encompass the things that secularism does, and the belief in a God doesn't affect like our society. It really doesn't. It's integration of religious beliefs into politics and into society that's a problem. And with that being said, yeah, I personally am more on board with a secular movement than I am with an atheist movement.
Well, unfortunately, regardless of what the word actually means and how it should be defined, and we've had plenty of arguments in this community on that topic. But the atheist movement does refer to a very specific thing, and it carries much further. The word atheist, this is my own opinion, but from what I've observed with people in that movement, atheist carries much further connotations than just simply not believing in a God. As much as people would like to say otherwise, it's what I see. Like, for some people, it's a really big part of their identity. For me, it's really absolutely not. It's a minor point, really. But some people define themselves as capital A atheist. Yes, I know, Raoul, blah blah blah, not important. but the sentiment, excuse me, the sentiment is there. Like, there's a difference between people who just happen to be atheists because they don't hold a belief in God, and they kind of are separate from the whole movement thing, and people who are capital A atheists, they consider themselves skeptics and all this other stuff, and they're like, it's a big deal for them, and I'm okay with that. I understand it, but it just doesn't appeal to me. And when I say that, even when I've said that to other people in the group, they don't get it, or they act almost defend, like, oh, you have to be part of the movement or you're selfish. I've heard that opinion expressed to me several times before, and my response is just like, fuck off. I don't want to be part of your movement if you're going to be like that.
Well, Kevin, can I ask you a question? Right, because there's a video, well, it was on Bill Maher's show, I believe it was, where Sam Harris was defending his, quite frankly, repulsive views he holds of Islam. and then C2 quote numbers that didn't actually support him, and then suggest that they did. This is that I live in the UK, which has quite a large Muslim population, I mean, not massively large, but large enough to be a minority. And the thing is that none of them cause trouble. None of them say that we have to follow their faith. They follow their faith. They just go to work and they just like everybody else. Now there are nutters out there who are Muslim. They just happen to be Muslim. You know, there are nutters who are Christian. There are nutters who are atheists in the UK. And I think that the problem is that when you live in the United States, where you don't really have that many Muslims, the only representation of Muslims you're going to say is going to be from, I don't know, Afghanistan or a really impoverished country where, you know, it's not the Muslims that are the problem, it's the people in charge. Now, I want to say, do you think if you had more Muslim, bigger population there, the hatred against Muslims wouldn't be as bad in America as, because like, I mean, I can speak for somebody who lives in the UK. It's not bad here. I mean, we still get it, but it's not as bad as it could be, or as it used to be in the 70s and 80s, where we just decided not to do that stuff anymore.
So you're asking, do you think the attitude here would be different if the Muslim population was larger?
Yeah.
I think, well, yeah, I think that could make some difference, but in America, I mean, I think America is a very special case because of, well, it's just a cultural thing. You know, with the terrorist attacks, the way Islam is portrayed in the media and in the culture and in the churches, fortunately, like, and the heavy Christian influence in American culture. I don't think simply increasing the population of Muslims would change things too much, but it could help. I think it definitely would help. You know, we've talked about before with homosexuality, for instance. When you know someone who is gay or who is Muslim or of any group that you know, don't have a high opinion of, it's harder to hate them if you actually know people like that. If you have friends or family who are gay or of some religion or atheist, so in that regard it could help. But I think the culture needs to change. There's a rather deep-seated bigotry towards Muslims in America.
That actually is a really good question, Gary, and I think you're right, Kevin. Like, but maybe the key is that you'd need to have it sort of during, like, over a long period of time, maybe during the development of a country. Like Canada we have a very low birth rate. We have a lot of land, so a huge part of our population is immigrants, and we have people from all over the world. Like my husband actually works with people that are getting like college entrance courses and GEDs and things, and like at least half of the people that he works with are from foreign countries, and so English is sometimes an issue, and he's helping them try to catch up and learn some things. And I mean, we've got Muslims and Buddhists, and I mean, we've got everything. I don't even know what else there is, but and I grew up with those people too, and maybe that's part of why Canada. It's not that Canadians aren't religious, but it's just that there isn't the animosity against other religions here so much.
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, a big animosity towards other religions in America, and I think I have to say regarding the atheist movement, I think when a lot of people atheists in America, the vast majority of them are deconverted Christians, and I think that sort of, you know, negative attitude towards other religions doesn't go away when you convert to atheism. I think some people have this think that just by deconverting and, you know, accepting science and becoming atheist means you suddenly become a critical thinker and that you can look at things rationally. Oh, no. It doesn't work like that. And I think you see a lot of just because someone leaves Christianity and now they have this negative attitude towards Christianity. Well, they still, I think some of the same attitudes towards other religions carry over. Just the reasons change.
I think in fairness, though, the American atheist community, from what I see and what I hear, I think whilst you may be right that they still carry over negative opinions of other religions, I think the atheist community in America is far more angry at Christianity because, as you say, they are deconverted, and I see many who carry a sort of "I've been conned" line of thinking.
The focus is largely on Christianity, and that I understand that, but it annoys me sometimes because I'm interested. Like, whenever God is brought up, it's kind of implied that we're talking about the Christian monotheistic God, and I think the concept is much broader than that, which is why when I identify as an atheist and I say I don't think God is a coherent concept, a lot of atheists are like, well, what do you mean? Of course it is.
Really, that's interesting. I have not come across many atheists with that point of view, but again, America, special case, I suppose.
Well, that's I used to be like that too. I mean, I came from a very fundamentalist church, and I was angry for a little bit too because I couldn't believe that I'd been lied to, and I mean, I could understand that my parents believed it, but it's hard to believe the entire church and everybody I grew up believed it, and they all taught me the same lies. And it's not, I don't even mean lies as in God exists. I mean, like, there were some very specific things I was taught about homosexuality and so on that were lies, and science in general. And that made me angry, and it took a while to get over it. So I kind of get that.
Well, in the UK, Shah, religion's more of a personal thing. If you believe in God, that's your business. If you don't, that's also your business. I don't think that mainly it's really a topic that really people talk outside their personal home or whatever, or maybe down the pub about, really. It's not really something that, I've never heard a politician really say, in this country, seriously, use religious speak or non-religious speak to get votes. There's not really a atheist ballot that a person needs to please to get a vote, or a Christian vote that someone needs to please to get a vote. I think the thing is that for us in the UK, religion's a personal thing. If you have one, it's your personal business. If you don't, that's also your personal business. But there are times where people do stuff in this country where it just makes you go, oh dear. Like recently, there was a thing where I think it was somebody was trying to make a cake for a homosexual couple. I think it was in Northern Ireland, I believe.
Yes.
And it was a big news for her, hoo-ha about it. Now, to me, that's their personal business. If they don't want to make a cake for a homosexual couple, no one may disagree with that on a personal level. That's their personal choice as business owners to not make that cake. However, over here it's big news. Everyone's moaning about it, having opinions. It's like, well, hang on a second. If they're business owners, they have a right to choose what business they do and do not want. And I'm sure there's another cake person that they can go to who would be happy to have them.
Well, Gary, there is a question of actually, are you allowed to discriminate on the grounds of sexuality? And I'm not sure where the law stands in the UK. I don't think you are, or it's certainly in question.
In that case, we have to raise the question of, okay, if we're going to say it's fine for a business to discriminate on that basis, what about race?
Exactly.
What about gender?
Yeah.
Well,
there is, just quickly, that there is an element in British law which I ran into during my time working in nightclubs, specifically nightclub management. And you'll see it very often on tickets to venues, concerts, nightclubs, pubs, etc. And that's the four letters ROAR. And those letters stand for Rights of Admission Reserved. Now, when that is invoked, the venue or the business doesn't actually have to validate it with a reason, because the right of entry is reserved. And I think that is something that does have connotations across other businesses. Fair enough, if you do specify a reason, then technically you could be opening yourself up to various charges of discrimination. But that all hinges on a reason being given.
Yeah.
rather than the right actually being, what's the word I'm looking for?
Right to
Taken up.
refuse. Right
Yeah.
to refuse. Okay, but in this specific case, the bakers in question, from what I understand, again, I don't know have all the facts of the case in front of me. But from what I understand, they knew it was a gay couple who wanted. I think it was the couple from Sesame Street on their cake, and they refused to do it. I think it was Bert and Ernie, from what I understand.
Yeah, Bert and Ernie.
Yeah, and the thing is that I do believe in their right to do that. While I may disagree with that on a personal level, if you do, let's turn this around. Let's say it was the BNP or the EDL or somebody like that, or UKIP, something like that, a political party. They have the right not to do that either. You know, you have the right to refuse somebody if you have personal disagreements with the things they do or teach or whatever. However, you know, you do have the right. Somebody does have the right to criticise you for doing that, and that's maybe I do think that. Sorry.
Can I just clarify what the analogy is that you're drawing here? Because I'm not clear.
The analogy is that it's the right, as Brian would say, the right to refuse service if you disagree with a particular thing. Well, I do think that they shouldn't have said, "Oh, it's because they're gay." I think they should have said, "We just can't do it at this time, too busy," or something like that. But it's because they actually said, "It's because they're gay, we're not going to do it." And I think that was wrong. But that's my again. There's a difference here between my personal opinion and freedom of the right to refuse service if you disagree with something.
I think from the American context, however, there is another element of this that's worth acknowledging. Whereas in the UK, if such an event were to happen, there would be plenty of other options available to buy that particular cake. I think one of the points with this incident in the United States is that certainly what I'm getting from a lot of the arguments being made is the lack of other business that would be willing to say, well, okay, screw their cakes, we'll make a cake for you. And I think that I think that may actually have a fairly significant part to play within this particular context. I don't know.
Might I add to that? We have something called the Civil Rights Act here in the United States. As a matter of fact, it's 50 years old this year. The few of us are old enough to remember when black people were refused service at various different establishments just simply because of their race. And there was the very famous incident of the sit-in and the Woolworths counter. Because of the American Civil Rights Act, you are not allowed to discriminate against people. If you are a public business, you must obey the public law. You cannot turn someone's business away, unless it is, you know, if you know the people are asking you to do something sexually explicit. You can turn people away if their behavior is, you know, poor, whatever. You know, people come in your establishment drunk or they're you know, all over each other, regardless of their relationship. For a homosexual couple to come in and order a cake and then be refused on the grounds they're homosexual is against the law, and that's the bottom line. It's the Americans. It's law here in this country, and that's to understand. If you have a public business, you must serve the public. You cannot discriminate against people because of who they are. You can discriminate against them because of their actions.
I think that's very.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jade, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, I was just going to say that is actually a very, very valid point. Also to acknowledge that, yes, the United States does have laws of that caliber, whereas we don't necessarily have them. Although we do have anti-discrimination laws specifically targeted against race, gender, age, and things like that, but they are very, very specifically worded.
There are all kinds of loopholes that can be drawn. They're clumsy.
Yes, they are.
Okay, Brian, but I'm not saying would you agree with them doing so, but do you think they should have the right to not provide a couple? this speaker in Northern Ireland?
Do I personally think?
Well, do you think it should be in the law that they should be able to? Because they
personally,
have
I
have civil
think
rights as
that.
well.
Personally, I think the United States did absolutely the right thing with their Civil Rights Act. Absolutely. I wish we would have something similar. But when it comes to the right of and the right of service, certainly within the context of nightclubs, as I said, which is where my direct experience lies, it's mainly enacted with regards to dress codes and whether somebody is already intoxicated to the point where they could pose a security or a behavioral risk within the venue. And that, I think, is appropriate utilization of those laws. So, yes, whilst I totally believe that we should have something very similar to the Civil Rights Act here, I think the what's the word I'm looking for? The disposition of most English businesses, pretty much in step with what you were saying about religion being a private thing. I think when it comes down to the bottom line of doing business with somebody and serving somebody, people here in the UK don't really care as long as they get in your business. And I think that is somewhat of a leveler, albeit that it's a leveler that on some levels does kind of obscure and obfuscate some of the loopholes that Cider was talking about just now.
Okay. I mean, I don't agree with them myself. I'm just wondering whereabouts you fall on this. Is this a business issue? Is this a civil rights issue? Is it a political issue? I mean, like, because again, I don't know whereabouts this falls. I mean, like, because we don't really have a written constitution, so therefore, we've not really done anything technically illegal.
No, but we do have written laws. We don't necessarily have a constitution, but we do have written laws. So
No, I don't really do. I'm just saying that, like, had they done anything that's necessarily illegal, that's all I'm asking. I'm not saying that.
Well, you can look that up under the law.
Yeah.
I'm not enough of a lawyer to know where they stand. But to me, it's purely a civil rights issue.
No, I agree. It is.
But there are so many loopholes. Even if you have laws and whatever, I mean, a cake shop could easily say, "I'm sorry, we're overbooked. We just can't do it." Right?
I don't disagree with any of that. I don't disagree with any of that.
But I'm not a big fan of making laws that basically say, I mean, yes, they're businesses that serve the public, but if you're not getting government funding, I don't know, like, I guess, I mean, like, I tutor in math and science, and people will say, will you tutor me? And sometimes I'll say no, and it's because I just don't want to. Maybe it's because I don't like that person. Maybe it's because I'm busy, or I just don't want to do it. And I don't know how you decide when someone's, doing it for legitimate reasons or not. And I don't know that we're one to judge.
I think the distinction there possibly is the sense that in this case in Northern Ireland, they actually explicitly stated a reason. And that's where they've created the issue for themselves. In that
Right.
sense.
Well, because they're stupid.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is there is a way to find that out, Shar. I mean, yeah, if someone comes in the shop and you're just not in the mood, you say, I'm sorry, we aren't taking any more bookings today. That's fine. You can do that.
Yeah.
No problem. However, if someone repeatedly does that to a particular group of people, there are governmental agencies that will look into that, because we have had that happen here. For example, if an apartment, let's say someone goes to an apartment house and they're African American, or they're Mexican American, or they're gay, or whatever, or they're hillbillies, because there are people who discriminate against people with them southern hillbilly accents. and they go and they're turned away. And if they might feel there's something wrong. They might feel that, the way they did that isn't wrong. So they can go to whatever governmental agency is involved. Usually, like with housing, it's usually the housing department. And they can file a complaint. And what they will do is they'll send somebody in who's just like the people who were refused, and then they'll send somebody in who are completely different from the people who were refused. So, for example, if you're discriminating against like a gay male couple, the housing group will send in a gay male couple, and then they'll send in a heterosexual couple. And if they find that the heterosexual couple is accepted, but the gay male couple is not accepted, and it's like on the same day, then they've got a case, and they'll open a case. Now, one situation, of course, isn't going to necessarily mean it, because the people could just simply say, well, you know what? That one guy looks just like my cousin Fred, and I can't stand my cousin Fred. And that's cool, especially if you show him a picture of cousin Fred. But they would investigate further before doing anything about it. But that's one of the ways that we really stop discrimination. I know here in California, I followed that. I had people who single people. They only wanted couples, and I had some friends caught up with that. They were really mad because they wouldn't rent to single people. They felt the people who owned the apartment complex felt that couples were far more stable. And so, my friends didn't complain, but other people complained, and the housing department there sent people out to check it out to make sure that was real. Because, of course, the people who owned the apartment weren't stupid enough to say, sorry, we aren't accepting single people. But when they sent different, people out there, they found that every single time single people were denied an apartment, people who were a couple, who were identically qualified, were accepted. So, that's when they brought a charge against them. And there's usually just a fine and a don't do it anymore kind of thing. And if they do it again, that's when they're in trouble. Usually it's just a fine. But there are procedures in place to deal with crap like that.
Yeah, I guess I don't really like when the government interferes too much, personally, and I really like how we have peer reviews for things like that. Like you can look at a cake shop online. It says, oh, they don't serve gay people. Well, then gay people aren't going to go there, and they're going to lose business, and that's fine. To me, I prefer that, and I think over time people will become more accepting and better people because of it. But I'd like to believe that anyway.
Okay, well,
but for here, it is a civil rights issue, and there are people who quite literally died to get civil rights in this country. So it's kind of touchy.
Well, and if it has anything to do with the government or public funding, then I'm totally on board with not letting that happen. I agree.
Okay, but I wanted to leave this. Well, I think we're going to call this at 12 my time, so that's like 15 minutes. But I wanted to talk about a big topic, which is, I know we agreed not to talk about them, but this is something that they've done recently that's annoyed me. That's been the recent thing with the transgender thing with Nadia, where they've been saying stuff like "you're really a man" and stuff like that. Now that thing really bothers me.
Me too, and I was thinking about it last night. I saw a little bit of the Hangout, and I was thinking about it, and I thought Nadia was born a woman, but has maybe a condition, or I don't know what you'd want to call it, that makes her body male, right? So it's like a defect. She's a woman, but her body's wrong. So she should have the right to fix it. Just like if you were born with holes in your heart, you'd want those to get patched up, right? You'd want to have surgery to fix it. There's no difference. So this whole thing calling her a homosexual is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with that.
And these people are so...
That's why I went into that hangout last night. That's why I went into that hangout last night, because of the way Nadia was being treated. And I went in there to show her some support, and also as a Christian who didn't accept the bigotry that was being done in the name of Christ. That's why I went in. I mean, I had said I'd be avoiding certain factions But I went in last night because I thought, no, I can't sit back and ignore this.
I was really glad you were there.
Yeah, I felt almost duty bound to go in there because, as I was saying earlier on in here, the moderates, in a way, have a duty to put out the more moderate view. And when we see something like that, then we should look after and help our fellow human.
Yeah, I agree.
After all, you've got to say, well, who did Jesus say was your neighbour? It's not the one who is of the same religious persuasion as you. It's the one who helps. That's the whole point of the Good Samaritan parable. To teach you who your neighbour is.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all I was going to say. But that's why I went in there last night.
Yeah, I'm going to make a point, but first I need to clarify something. How did this hangout actually come about?
Well, basically what had happened is, from what I understand, like Nadia had a hangout beforehand. That was about 8 hours, where G-Man and Revelation News to Revelation TV had both said stuff about Nadia in a transgender state. And then this hangout yesterday was about that, and then Rand Campbell came in, and then I've only watched the beginning part of it. I've not got to the part where Ryan comes in yet. However, I would say that I'll ask a few other questions a bit, if I may. And the question is this: are you as angry as I am about the way that they take? I think it's is it John or Luke? I can't remember which one it is. The one where Jesus talks about divorce and then uses that as proof that Jesus was against transsexuals. Are you as cross as I am about that?
Oh, yeah, they use that. Have you not heard that he created them both, male and female, blah, blah, blah. And they use that passage to support any anti-LGBT. They use it to support anything that's anti-evolution. It seems to be they will use it however it suits them at the time.
Yeah.
Rather than just read it for a question and an answer to that specific question.
At this stage, I don't even think it's a question of religion or scripture or whatever. I just think they're willfully ignorant bigots who are using a cultural reference in order to justify that bigotry.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think that's all it is.
And people are not created male and female. It's not that simple. There is androgen insensitivity syndrome, where you have women who have an X and a Y chromosome. They're women, but they have an X and a Y chromosome. There's another syndrome, I can't think of the name, but where there are men who have 2 X chromosomes. And then we have, there are men who have 2 X chromosomes and a Y chromosome. There are people who have both mosaicism and chimerism, and I always forget the difference between the two of them. But these are people who have some of the cells in their body may have 2 X's. Some of the cells in their body may have an X and a Y. We know from studies that have been done that the brains of male to female transsexuals are more like the brains of women. They've done the research and found this out. So no, perhaps God did initially make male and female, or perhaps that's just a metaphor. But as Fiona said, it's a question. But as for today, no, people are not just male and female. I mean, to begin with, as far as I know, I'm completely female. I never had any inkling that there was anything else there. But have I run down and had my DNA tested? No. How many people have? Your DNA does not define who you are for very, very many reasons. So you can't. It just isn't that simple. They are so incredibly ignorant, and they stand on that ignorance and wave their ignorant flag.
Yeah.
But can I ask you a question? And this is going to probably come off as wrong, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
I mean, do you think that, like, if Nadia said it wrong to G-Man and said, well, can't you stop being black or something? it may have made a stronger point. I mean, the thing is that she feels more female than male, and to be honest with you, I support her whatever decision she makes, and I find what they do to be reprehensible. However, and here's a big however, he gets really sensitive about whenever his race is brought up. Now, why is it that it's okay for him to bring up her transsexuality and the fact that he feels it's icky? But however, when people bring up reasonable points about the fact that, you know, he's from a race and this, that, and the other, whether they be legitimate points or not, he is from a race that have been castigated by white people.
Yeah.
Gary, it's a hypocritical shit.
No, there are a lot of African Americans in this country who are very religiously conservative, who find it appalling that LGBT rights is compared with civil rights, with race rights. They refuse to realize that there is a parallel there, because they are anti-gay. That's all there is to it. He does not want that connection to be made, and many of them don't. But you're absolutely right. How can you stop being black? One other thing I wanted to add is more and more people are being honest about their identity. There are people who will point out that they don't much feel like male or female. Mm-hmm. There are people now who are, just very out and proud as an androgynous. And there are people who will say that there are times in their life when they feel more male and times when they feel more female. It's the same thing with sexuality. Sexuality is more fluid than we ever thought it was. So we're now discovering that sex, gender, sexuality, gender identity, whatever you want to, any terms you want to use, are all far more fluid than we ever expected. I mean, it's always been that way. It's just people were quiet about it, or you made yourself fit in society unless you were really, really bold. It just isn't that simple. It's absurd to say that there are men and women. There aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is, Jade, I think it fits into their narrative of, well, sexuality is this or is that. Again, this is the reason why they're not pro-gay marriage, because if there's gay marriage, then there's ambiguity within gender and sexuality. Now, the thing is that what you usually find within this mindset is a lot of doublespeak. This is something that, even though it hates me to bring it up, but that happened with Mr. Ken Jones a couple of weeks ago when I was on his hangout, and we were talking about homosexuality, and he started to bring up. So, I mean, to be honest with you, that's soul destroying, but I won't go into why. The points he was bringing up about homosexuality were really bad. Now, he started saying stuff about AIDS, about this, that, and the other. Now, I thought that AIDS conjecture with homosexuality stopped being a thing in the 1980s.
Yeah. But not
amongst the religious right. No. Yeah. And might I say that if you guys ever run into this crap, I have quite the collection of research that I've done on all of the fake statistics or misused statistics that the religious right is using. And it just is astonishing. I intend to do a hangout about this in the future, but I'm still gardening, for goodness sakes. It's 80 degrees out during the day, bright and sunny. I have some little baby pepper plants that just came up. It's just ridiculous, the weather here. So I have some stuff planned, but there are these statistics on homosexuality about how bad homosexuality is that are being spread all over the internet. And what I did was I went out there, and they were nice enough to put references. I went out there and I got all the references. I got the papers. I bought the books. And when you look at what they actually say, you just want to facepalm really, really hard, because they're very creative in the use of the statistics. You've probably all heard the term, there are three kinds of lies. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Well, there's really nothing wrong with statistics if you keep them in context. What demographic are you looking at? There was a recent study somebody mentioned to me on Facebook. We're going, well, look at this, look at the homosexuals. I went and looked at the research, and the first thing I saw is it was done in San Francisco. That's not exactly representative of homosexuals all across the country. Seriously, San Francisco is San Francisco. just right there. I mean, there were other things wrong with the study, but first of all, and by the way, San Francisco, I don't know if you know this, is a very small city. It's only, I think, 46 square miles. It's sometimes known as the big little city. So it's not very big, and although it has a pretty good sized population, it's nowhere near something like New York or Los Angeles or, you know, many other big cities. So you're actually dealing with a fairly small insular place. So when you're looking at study, yes, there's a lot of homosexuals there. It's a good place to do studies, but you're also realizing you have this little small pool you're dealing with. But there were other things wrong with the study. And the other big thing wrong with it that I tried to point out to the guy is he's going, homosexuals this, homosexuals that. And I point out, excuse me, no. At the very most, you're only talking about half of homosexuals. And he's like, what do you mean? It's only about men. Because the statistics on women are, homosexual women are completely different. They're the other end of the spectrum from men. And all that does is reflect the difference between male and female homosexuality. You know, men will screw anything that moves. Sorry about that, guys. Some men will screw everything that moves.
I've got a physical disability. I can't run that fast.
Well, as Fiona's here, I wanted to we plan to do these semi-regularly. I wanted to put an idea for next time we do this to her. I want to what's the word? I want to try and pitch an idea to her. And the idea is this: you've had about 3, maybe 4 conversations with Nephilim 3, Fiona. And I thought it might be interesting if you could get out most of the stuff you want to about evolution, because again, there's just Epi's here, so we'll keep going a little bit further. Hey, Epi. I did send you a message on Skype about this, mate.
Sorry, my Skype wasn't open.
Alright, no problem, mate. But yeah, Fiona, you've had a conversation with Nephilim 3, well, more than a couple. I wanted to let you discuss the difference between evolution, the theory of evolution, and common descent. And why people may mix up the terms and what mistakes people could make, because the thing is that one of the things that I found interesting is that a while ago, for those who didn't see it, I'm talking to the audience here, we did a science hangout in which I made an error. And the thing is that Fiona pointed out that I made this error. And the thing is that, and she made the point of maybe this is where creationism comes from, is that people misunderstand it because they're not scientific men. Like, I admitted before the hangout started that my degree is not in science, it's in something else, it's in the arts. And I think that that Fiona, maybe if you did the hangout and explain things where we all ask you questions and maybe we go back about DNA and stuff like that, maybe that might be an interesting hangout for next time. How do you feel about that? Or would it depend on how well you're feeling at the time?
Yeah, you mean do sort of a creationism and religion kind of thing?
Yeah.
Not just.
I'm saying that we should try and get some creationists on.
No.
No.
That's the one thing I would say I object to. I want to keep doing these over and over again. Well, okay. The problem with getting creationists on is all the ones we know are obnoxious.
Well, can I interject there and bring up the recent case of Andy Jack, who used to be a creationist and no longer is. So I think you have to make the distinction and say to these people, are you willing to challenge your beliefs and accept you may be wrong?
Yeah. And if we were to have Andy Jack on when he was a creationist, that would be okay because he's a different kind of person. So it's not that I'm totally against creationists. I'm against a certain kind of creationist.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to make that clear for anybody.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I think actually not had a chance to get to the bottom of Andy Jack's change of mind, because the hangout we had to try and just talk about it was first scuppered by G-Man and then by Matthew Bell. just coming in and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, maybe
I-
that's
That was a real shame. I'd love to know, because he called me out and I did a response video to a video of his where he claimed that whales came from cows. So it's quite a welcome change to have seen over the past few months from Mr.
Well,
Jack.
Yeah.
Given what Fiona just said, I think that's a great idea, because what if maybe we can, I don't know if anybody here knows Andy very well or can get a hold of him, but what if we could get
I
Andy
can.
in and maybe, okay, Fiona, can you get a hold of Andy and maybe we can do this again? Maybe we'll start the hangout, have the hangout that you and Andy were supposed to have, and we'll just keep the fundies out because they're not, you know. And when I say fundies, you know who I mean. I don't necessarily mean everyone who is a fundamentalist bent. I'm talking about the little group of obnoxious.
Yeah.
I think we can include certain atheists in that group of fundies. You know, the super anti-theistic ones as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can be a little bit more broad brushstroked on this and exclude, rather than fundamentalists, just sort of broad brushstroke assholes.
Yeah, and that's kind of why this was started, Effie, is to have people who are on different sides of the issue who can have a reasonable conversation without feeling extremist and loud shouting people of any stripe.
Well, the thing is, Jude, is that I think that people misuse the term fundamentalist, because, again, I'm a fundamentalist. I believe in the fundamentals of the Bible. I don't believe in the fundamentals of the essays, but I believe in the fundamental message.
Can I explain that?
But you have to bear in mind the connotations in common usage of the word that you're using.
Yeah, I know. But
Let me explain that. The word doesn't have anything to do with having a fundamental understanding of the Bible or being a fundamentalist in terms of your religious beliefs. It comes from a group of essays gathered in a book. It's called The Fundamentals of Christianity, I think. And it comes from, I think, the 1920s. And this was the basis of modern fundamentalism in the United States. So when we speak about fundamentalism, that's usually what we're talking about. We're talking about those people who have that mindset.
Yeah.
Actually, it's much worse than that. The fundamentalist papers we're referring to were written by the Princeton theologians who went on to make famous Westminster College. What's very interesting about that is those they were not biblical literalists. They were inerrantists, meaning they don't believe the Bible was an error, but they didn't think everything was literal. And in fact, if they found a problem with the Bible, they would sometimes attribute it to a manuscript error, as opposed to saying, look, we got to bend reality around what's in the Bible right here. They were also old Earth creationists, by the way. So even the fundamentalists have become far more crazier than what they were in the 1920s.
Yep.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, it sounds. Sorry, Jay. That's just.
I was just going to say the fundamentals are available free on Google.
Yeah, I was going to say, put into that context, it sounds more like a proper noun in the way that apologetic is a proper noun.
Yeah.
But also, Jade, I would say this is that, like, again, there are people who are fundamental about their faith but aren't extremists, and I think what you're talking about are extremists and not fundamentalists. Like, I know, like, for example, Fiona calls herself a creationist. No, she's not a younger creationist or creationist in the sense that people use it on YouTube, but she's a creationist in that she believes that God created the universe. And I think that I think the word fundamentalist has been used in the same way erroneously as well. In that, you know, it's linked to extremism when it shouldn't be.
Yeah,
You do have to bear in mind. Go on.
it being a proper noun. Because when you turn something into a proper noun, then you do start to move away from the actual meaning of the word.
But I think you also have to bear in mind that the meanings of words do change and connotations change over time.
Yeah, of course.
So you can only reclaim a word so far, you know. So you may say that, well, they're fundamentalists, but connotations that we know.
You're having fun there, Fiona.
What are you doing?
Fun there, Fiona.
Oh, I'm cleaning the fan on my laptop. You have no idea what's just
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail. It was just amusing me watching you.
Sorry.
I was desperate to get my train of thought. Right, all I could hear was just...
I spent yesterday sucking the vents. The fan didn't come on.
Okay, so yesterday you were sucking it, today you're blowing it?
Yeah.
No, I'm surprised.
Somewhere in the corner in the corner of the internet, and just had a stroke.
Well, she's got to be careful, otherwise that Jim guy's going to accuse her of doing something to that bloody computer bloody thing.
Yeah.
You keep doing that enough before you get with one of his fine young toes.
Yeah. Well, if you actually saw last night's hangout, you would realise just how ironic that is.
I kind of made that in the context of last night's hangout.
Because I don't think Gary's seen it yet.
I've seen parts. I saw the first part of it when Nadia was called a man by G-Man and Revelation News. I can't remember Revelation News. It's Revelation TV. Fuck.
Well, just you wait till you get to the bit with me and Rand Campbell.
Oh God. Well, the thing is, I'm going to say this now, and not a lot of people are going to know this. I actually met Ron in person, and he's actually a lot better person in person than he is on YouTube. He's a lot nicer person.
Yeah, well, given that he spent over an hour sitting calling me a prostitute, a hooker, a bitch, and that I was being pimped out, no, I can't agree with you on that, Gary.
Oh, he called you that too? He called me that as well.
Yeah.
He also called me a
constantly calling me prostitute hooker.
So this was my comment about engaging these people on because we were going back to an earlier part of this conversation. We were talking about Nadia's hangout.
Yeah.
But my question is, why Nadia engage with these people in the first place?
Just trying to change minds.
Yeah.
But we know these people.
Well, the thing is that I had to say. Sorry.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I had the same opinion about G-Man that I can change his mind for ages and ages and ages, but then there comes a point where I just went, do you know what, I've had enough of it.
There has to be a mind there to change.
The only way you could change his mind is if you threw it through a brick wall.
Fiona, it's because Jason's borrowed his mind moth.
Oh.
They've only got one between them, and they share it round.
Yeah. But
I mean, what were those ancient? Brian might remember the ancient Greek women in Greek mythology. The three women who shared an eye.
They were the seers.
Yeah, and they had the one eye between them. And who was it? Was it Jason that stole their eye?
It was one of Heracles' Tascalon, no?
To get answers from him, he stole their eye.
Yeah.
I think it was Jason. Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what's going on there. That they're passing a brain around, and it gets a little manhandled along the way.
The thing is,
and on that
note,
on that note, Gary, thanks for an interesting hangout and a productive conversation for once, I have to say.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, would you be up for? Because, as I said, for a couple of weeks' time, hopefully we're going to do a evolutionary hangout. Would you be up for that?
Yes, I would, because there are some questions on biology that I would actually like to put to Fiona. So, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Also, don't we have an outstanding hangout with the rest of Mary Schweitzer's papers?
Do we?
Yeah, that's right, we do.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about next Friday for Schweitzer?
Yeah. Why
okay,
not?
let's do Schweitzer next Friday. Everybody's invited. We already did one. You can find it on. It's on your channel, isn't it, Mary?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And what we did was we went through Mary Schweitzer's papers. For those of you who don't know, she's the one who's found the soft tissue in dinosaur bones. The soft tissue that has been completely misinterpreted by creationists. And it was a fantastic hangout.
It was. We actually read out her papers word by word, paragraph by paragraph. And
Well,
when
we
it's-
did
it was
skip a
really-
few things about methodology, but that's about it. Yeah, and it was fantastic because we had people who didn't really know what was going on, but we explained it. Or mostly Fiona explained it. The we being a general we. Fiona explained it. So yeah, we could do Mary Schweitzer's papers next Friday, and then the Friday after that we could have another hangout of our little group here and the Faith and Beliefs group. I don't know what we're going to call it, but it doesn't make any difference. And
Bunch of
we'll have to
nonsense,
get Cider Thinker into our little cabal here.
Yeah.
Well, as I was saying, we'll try to think. Do you have a Skype address, mate?
I do. Yes, I'll put it up in the chat. If I can.
Remember, I don't have Skype.
Jade, I was going to say this. Can he join the group?
Oh yeah, I said, Gary, I think you or somebody who knows how to do this, because I'm totally inept at Google Plus, needs to set up a Google Plus group to put everybody in.
No. I mean,
so that we can just send one. We can just send one.
No,
Yeah.
you know what group I'm talking about, Jade? Cognito.
What?
Cognito.
Ah!
Well, we've got Cogito, but like Fiona doesn't have Skype.
Yeah, I mean for
That's
Cider
what-
Thinker. I mean, sorry.
Oh no, for Cider Thinker, yeah. But yeah, if we set up a Google Plus group with like everybody's name in it, then you can just send out the link to everybody at once. And I'm totally inept at Google Plus groups, but we can have somebody else. I don't know if you've ever set up a group, but God knows we've got enough people in Cogito that know how to do that.
Yeah. I'm not one of them. Oh, for goodness. Look at this.
What am I looking at?
Look.
Hold it up
When I
again.
was actually...
Good grief.
I know. I mean, this is one of the pieces that's come out of my fan. You see it?
Yep.
See it sitting on there?
Yeah.
Right, and I've got about a dozen of those out of the fan.
Compressed air is everybody's friend.
I don't have any compressed air. But yesterday when I first sucked the vents, I inhaled about 4 cats worth of fluff and nearly asphyxiated myself. Don't suck your computer, basically.
Okay, Kevin isn't here. Kevin isn't here, but we're
We've
gonna have
got
to
Blue.
make a
Blue
call.
is says Blue Eyes. Or what was Blue Eyes says Blue is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Blue. Yeah, Gary, we'll have to. Actually, I'll put in Cogito right now. We have to make a new. Make a new card for Bears Against Humanity. Don't suck your computer.
Exactly. Because if you do, you inhale cat. Oh. Sorry, I mean, we're still on air, so I'm not going to use the other word that I could have used there.
Thank you. Very decent of you. Very decent.
It is. I actually swore last night on air 3 times.
Was this on Nadia's Hangout?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm watching it. There's certain people who you just enjoy swearing because it's a rare commodity.
Yeah, but I swore 3 times. It was near where I was leaving. I think it was maybe half an hour before I left.
Who were you swearing at? Nadia or somebody else?
Sorry?
Who were you swearing at? Nadia or somebody else?
Ran Campbell.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Says it all, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, sure does.
I've got a horrible feeling I'm going to have bits left over when I put this back
Oh, I
together.
gotta ask you something, Fiona. I hate to. I'm probably gonna regret this since it sounds so inexcusably vain, but how come I can't get no love from Jason Burns? 30 motherfucking videos about his ass, and he hasn't mentioned me once. Come on, man. Jesus.
Yeah.
The thing is that
It's because you're a disgrace to atheism. You're not yet cyberbullying.
That's right. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah, that's it. You got to be cyberbully.
But Blue, you may be cyberbullying, but God bless you.
Yeah. Actually, I fell about laughing last night when DPR Jones was talking to Jason. It
I
was,
haven't finished that. I
oh, you love
watching it. I could not believe DPR Jones came in there.
Oh, listen, wait until you get to the end. You're going to love it. But there's a bit where DPR is talking to Jason very politely, but he mentions that the debate that they had, but very subtly, he says, a debate. I fell about laughing when DPR did that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I'm going to do it on the show this week. I have to make sure everybody knows about the DPR Jones debate, because that is the most central video to the Jason Burns experience, is the first 5 minutes of his debate with DPR Jones, where he's just reading someone else's stuff.
Yeah.
And the very fact that he would title these hangouts that he's had recently, "Please Convince Me."
Yeah.
The same name as the website as the shit you stole from. God. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, but the thing is with Jason is that, like, he's got a lot of books that he does take from, but the thing is that he doesn't know how to take original material, like take what other people say and then make his own original thought out of it.
Yep.
That's not easy to do. That's not easy to do. I mean, for some it's easier than others, but it's not easy to do, and he's never tried to.
Yep.
Nope.
Well, Blue is right. It's something that you learn. You're supposed to learn in school. That's why you're supposed to write a lot of papers on a lot of different subjects in school. You're supposed to take from all these different sources and then combine them into your own work. And
yeah.
And nowadays in school, it's even harder than when I was in school. I only ever cheated once, and that was in 7th grade. But because nowadays, a lot of professors, I have a friend who was a college professor, and they have all these wonderful online sources that they can research to see if their students are plagiarizing, and they use them. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is difficult to try to create your own narrative out of all these other sources. And poor Jason, who is, shall we say, a bit limited in some ways. I'm not questioning his intelligence, but his ability in a lot of ways. I don't know what his intelligence is. I really don't. But he just reads from other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, looking back on it now, I feel that the creative writing classes I took, even in high school before I got to university, that is so important. Forcing yourself to think of things you wouldn't, or to push your imagination. Because if you don't push your imagination, then you don't use it later.
Yeah.
Well, and
figure out how to say something else in a new way, or put two thoughts together that no one else has, or you haven't heard them,
right?
Or no one else has heard you put them together that way.
And can I say I worked for a multinational computer company, one of the larger computer companies in the world. And, you know, people think that you don't need that kind of stuff in school. Guess what? If you get to a position like I had, which was not a really high position, okay, you constantly have to write up proposals. You have to bring your ideas forward. You end up going to classes like Six Sigma and Lean and learning all this stuff and then having to write about it and talk about it. So if you don't know how to write, if you don't know how to speak, you aren't going to get very far. Because they aren't going to waste their time with someone who's completely inarticulate. And you need to be able to have basic skills. I was lucky because I not only had a lot of writing classes, I had speech classes. So, you know, we had to prepare speeches. We had to do extemporaneous speeches. The teacher would just point to one of us. We'd have to go to the front of the class and make it up. We had debates that were actually real debates, not debates. And frequently what would happen is, I went to Catholic high school, you know, one of the nuns would say, okay, what side do you want to take on this? And you'd raise your hand and say, oh, I want to take this side. And she'd say, oh, good, you're taking the other side.
The other one.
Right.
Yeah, and
that's the old trick. That's the old teacher trick.
Well,
you have
isn't
to.
that the height of intellectualism is when you can argue the position that you actually don't agree with?
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
I do that all the time myself.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that you have to. It's like you have a superhero skill though. if you're able to practice that. I mean, it's like you have a superhero skill. You have to have great responsibility, or then you're just a sophist and a danger. If you can make the weaker argument look this stronger.
Yeah, I have a pretty large library of creationist literature. I buy all their books, and I read them. And I try to argue from their point of view. And I will tell you the truth, I think I could argue creationism better than most of them do. And not necessarily in terms of the amount of knowledge I have, but I know what mistakes not to make.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jude, I could probably argue creationism a lot better than a lot of creationists do. Actually, I actually have. Because me and Jade had a sort of like mock conversation where I pretended to be a creationist. And I think I did okay.
You did good. Yeah, and part of it was Gary. It was me sort of critiquing it. Unfortunately, I screwed up a few times because I kept forgetting Gary was being a creationist. You know what I mean? It's hard to sometimes. If we'd been talking, it would have been probably better. But we were doing it via Skype. But no, he did really well, because he was trying to understand.
I was thinking of this for that hangout we're going to do about evolution, Jade. If I could do that again, because I don't mind doing it.
Well, man, you shouldn't. I don't like this pretending to be something you're not just to prove a point. I mean,
no, it's not pretending. It's bringing up the questions. What he wants to do is
Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not going to pretend to be a creationist as much as bring up all the correct creationist arguments so that they can then be shot down.
I see.
It's not that. It's just that. Is that the thing you'll find with this?
Want to have a creationist argument?
No, I'm just saying, Blue. The reason that I was arguing this is because something I noticed with Nephilim 3, because this is when he'd had about at least 2 of the 3 hangouts he'd had with Fiona, because I've watched them all, was that he wouldn't let her finish a point.
Right.
He would he'd let her get to like halfway to a point where she'd be making a point about was it about like a new anatomical feature. And then she'd be getting to it, and then he'd interrupt her saying, "Oh, do you mean blah?" And then she's like, instead of letting her finish.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that I wanted to do that way, is because I do let people finish.
I understand. Okay, I see your.
But can I point out that in science, one of the things, if you have come up with a new idea, you think, "Wow, great hypothesis here. I'm going to have to test it." What you try and do is you set out to disprove your hypothesis.
Right.
You have to look at it from the other side, critically, and say, well, if I am wrong here, then what would I expect to see? And design your experiment to look at that. And this is why being able to argue the other side is a good thing.
I mean, I think
because it helps you identify the weaknesses in your own. That's why it's so important. And it makes you honest about identifying the weaknesses in your argument.
Somebody better hang out than us.
Epicurus, you're making a lot of noise.
Epi, I'm not hearing you. I'm just hearing noise.
Oh, sorry, I'm in a lounge and people are talking around me. I thought I muted myself. Oh, but I might just contribute to this. In philosophy courses, you actually have to take into account what your opponent is arguing, and sometimes you actually have to argue from their perspective and make it. And that's important because you need to anticipate what they might say or what they could say. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed.
That's right.
For example, even when I do, one interesting thing is when I actually do my own apologetics, people are pretty amazed that I actually have my own argument. So, for example, why is there evil in the world? Libertarian free will is usually the response. Oh, God gives us free will, therefore it's for the necessity of our freedom. Of course, I don't accept that argument. Funny enough, I have my own argument against the problem of evil. And people are caught off guard because they think, okay, that's kind of new.
What is it?
Oh, I argue. I give a defense against the logical problem of evil using what's known as the PSR, or the principle of sufficient reason. The argument goes along the lines of it's in the form of modus tollens. If a being is only capable of performing perfect actions, it is a perfect being. Humans are not perfect beings. Only God is perfect. That's true by definition. Therefore, humans are not capable of performing solely perfect actions, hence trans-world depravity. That means no matter what world God creates, someone is always going to screw up. However, what's really interesting is, this is where the PSR come in. We could it's not logically inconsistent to imagine a world where everyone just happens to do the good thing, but that's contingent upon what's known as brute facts. That's just the way it is in that world. But on the PSR, there has to be a sufficient reason as to why an action happened or why something was necessitated. And of course, because there are going to be creatures that are imperfect, that's what's going to come out. It's inevitable in all of them. So that's my defense. And before someone could bring up, but there's too much evil, or there's just far more evil than expected, or that doesn't answer natural evils. For example, like bad weather, like deadly weather. Well, it's not supposed to. The logical problem of evil just means that any evil is logically contradictory towards the existence of God. So that's what I take in terms of my own defense.
Again, I wish I was at that party you were at.
I actually have a blog. I write up these philosophical arguments and defenses, and they're right up there. I cover Christian doctrines and other such things.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's Fiona.
Say, Fiona, do you play music? Were you like ever play music, piano or clarinet or any shit like that?
Flute.
Really?
Yeah, this one time at band camp.
I play I play flute very badly. Self-taught.
Right.
And I'm teaching myself piano.
Nice.
Going to go for another couple of minutes, and then I'm going to call it. So any final thoughts for anybody? Because I think we've gotten way off topic. I thought it was supposed to be.
By the way, can I just say that Carlton here is witness to what I was doing to this laptop the other day.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a happy laptop. That's all I gotta say.
You're trashing the hangout. You're trashing the hangout.
You know why? You know why the fan doesn't blow in that laptop, Fiona?
Why?
It's embarrassed out of shame. It can't do it as well as you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.